Back on the Riley again. I'm sort of flitting between Riley and motorcycle, doing little bits and pieces on each. I'm actually just waiting for timber to arrive. So that'll be the timber I need to finish off the doors. But in the meantime, I have taken the front off the car and I'm having a look at how this water pump and piping is going to work. So the housing bolts on here, and this is the pump at the bottom. And this is the inlet for the pump, which comes from the bottom of the radiator, and this is the outlet. The outlet has to go from here up to the side of the engine here. Before, I just had this pipe going down into the bottom of the radiator. What I think I will do is I need to make up a little fitting for here. It actually came with a little plate for that, so that's not too hard. And I think what I will do is machine up. So this is a piece of aluminium I've machined. That's going to be used to blank off this on the radiator because I won't be using this. I'll come back to that in a sec. But I've got much more of this aluminium tube. I had to buy a whole bar. So I will machine up a fitting. The hose diameter on these is 1 1/4 inches, so about 32 millimeters. So I can machine up a little fitting, and theoretically, I need to practice my aluminium TIG welding. I can weld that onto there, so there's a pipe fitting there. And this is the wrong size pipe, but then you can see how a hose can run from there up to here. I can either run it down like that, or originally they came across, sort of straight across, I think, and around. That might make the bends a little bit too tight though. So I believe the original pipe comes across, has a little bend on it this way, so that this pipe just goes across like that. That's going to be hard for me to make. Originally it would have been a cast pipe, but I think doing it like this and across, I have to make sure it doesn't rub on the nuts and things, but I think doing it like that will be nice and neat and tidy, keeps it all out of the way. So I believe that should work. What else have I done? So on this, like I say, I can blank this off. When I had this built, I did put an outlet here because I knew this was the side the water pump was on, but I got that wrong. One, that's diameter is too small. That's 3/4 inch. What I'm going to do is cut this off and again practice my TIG welding, weld a blank onto there, and I'm going to weld a new pipe coming off the bottom here. This is how they were originally. So that'll poke down. I'll have to trim some of this. And then all I need is a 90-degree bend pipe, which I'm pretty sure I can get, that goes from here up into the bottom of the radiator. You can see that's not actually bolted on at the moment. So I'll just leave that sitting there. I have machined up that little piece. So that's over here. And that's actually the diameter of the pipe. So that'll weld into the bottom of the radiator. The hose goes on there, clamps onto that. These are my shims I used when I was gripping it. I don't know how other people on YouTube, Mr. Crispin and Quinn at Blondie Hacks and places like that, how they manage to do machining and keep everything tidy. Because whenever I do it, it just ends up a complete mess. There's stuff everywhere. I'm guessing they clean up between shots or something. But this will go... Oh, also, I use those cans for shims. I find it's handy to have a shim cupboard in the shed. But this will go under there, and then that's where my hose will come off. So I think that'll work. That should work fine. The other thing I'm wondering about is, does anybody know something that's good to put on these pipes before you put the rubber hoses on, to stop them sort of vulcanizing themselves onto the metal. Does anybody use anything on that to make it easier to get them on and off later on? I don't know, something like silicone spray, or there must be something that people can use. The other thing that's a little bit of a worry is when I drained this, oops, there's kind of this mud stuff in it. It is literally dust, I think, or mud. Now that hasn't come from the radiator, obviously, because that was brand new. So that's come from out of the block. And I did thoroughly clean this block multiple times. I seem to remember I had it sitting in molasses for months. You know, it's been water blasted, it's been cleaned out. I probably should have taken it somewhere and had it hot tanked. And I did ask a local place about that, but they didn't seem that keen to do it, so I never actually got it done. But I'm assuming that's just stuff that's coming out of the water passages. So one thing I'll have to do when I actually get this all up and running again is run it a few times and flush it out. So there's not too much in there, there's just a little bit. But now I'm putting a pump in there, I want to keep that as clean as possible, of course. So, like I say, once you run the engine a few times, that'll help clear all of that stuff out. This is actually the coolant that came out of it. I didn't have antifreeze in there for now. I'm actually using Fernox, which is, it's stuff they use in the UK for central heating radiators. And that's meant to work pretty well with dissimilar metals, because there's all sorts of different metals in these vintage engines. So I'm going to see how that goes. And I actually lost a film. I've stripped down the pump, and I gave that a good clean as well. It was just a bit dusty. I don't think it's actually been used. I think it's been sitting under a bench somewhere probably. And unfortunately I broke the seal. This goes underneath the impeller, between the impeller and the housing, and I believe this is some sort of carbon or graphite seal that broke. This is the seal that goes around the shaft. This is a little bit mangled as well, but I think that'll be okay. That should all go back together. So I'm going to need to make a new one of these. It's 1/8 of an inch thick, and I don't know if you can just buy the material. I don't know what I need to look for, what I need to actually find or buy, but possibly there's something, a modern equivalent, some sort of probably Teflon type plastic or seal that I could use. I don't know. So that's a little problem I'm going to have to fix. I can't imagine it's too hard to sort that out, because this is probably a sort of wear piece. The other thing I need to do is work out the drive dog and how that works. So this is what was on the other housing. So this basically goes in there, and the bottom of it sits in a bush, which was all nice and full of oil. And then this is actually a long nut which goes onto there, and that helps hold everything together. So the water pump has the same drive, with the same sort of drive gear. That's down in there, and you can see there's sort of a rectangular driving dog. So what I need to make is a little piece that fits on the end of the magneto. So this is the magneto shaft, and this is tapered. So what I need is a thing with a taper, and then a wider piece with a slot milled in it. I can do that. The bit I can't do myself is, this is on a taper, and this taper is keyed, and I have no way of making that key slot. I'm not even actually sure how they normally make those key slots. You can sort of see some marks in there how it's been held. I know if it's a parallel one, you can sort of use I think it's a brooch. There's a thing that you use on a press, and you can press it through and it'll cut the key slot for you. But how do you do it on a taper? I don't actually know. So that's something I should look up. So what I'm thinking, because the taper I'm pretty sure I could machine, I've done that before. It's a little bit fiddly and you have to be careful, but I could get that to work. But that slot I can't do. So what I'm thinking is I will either buy another one of these. These are available through the Riley spares. I think they're about £50 each. Or else I'll just modify this one. I'll probably just modify this one, that'll be quicker. And then machine up a piece of steel that this will be a press fit into. And I'll probably press fit it and weld it. And then on the mill, machine the driving dog piece. So effectively, it's good because this gives me all the sizes. So I know that the gear sits in the same place in the housings. So the driving dog on the pump is going to be sitting up here. So what I need to do is make a piece that pushes on here and welds on, and then slot it so it can engage with that dog. But then it'll have the absolute correct taper and, more importantly, that key slot. And I know it fits on this magneto because it's been working, and that will give me that drive. That'll go on there, and I think I will have to machine up or shorten this sort of nut thing, or make up something that'll do the same job so that it goes up inside there, and that's the lock nut that goes on there. When I first assembled all of this, I used Loctite on there. That worked really well. That was actually quite hard to get off again. So that was all holding on well. And I think that's how that piece is going to have to work. Other than that, I think that's kind of it. I'll try and keep these little films shorter. One of my friends complained he never has time to watch them all because they're too long. The other problem I've been having lately is actually making the films. So I've been using my phone to film these, and it's a pretty good phone. It's a Samsung Note 10 Plus, I think it is. It's a few years old now, but the camera on it's really nice. The problem is the USB-C port on the bottom has failed, which means I can't plug a cable in and transfer the files off it. I can still charge it up because it'll charge wirelessly, so that's no problem. And you would think, well, modern technology, you just connect it via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It turns out Bluetooth is far too slow. It doesn't have the bandwidth. It'll just take hours to transfer files. Wi-Fi, there is an app, a Samsung app you can use, but it's rubbish. And it only lets you transfer files up to 500 megabytes, and the video file can easily be more than that. There didn't seem to be any other simple ways of doing it that I could find. There are other apps you can get, that you can buy, but I don't want to risk buying one because it's hard to know if it's actually going to work for you or not. So what I've had to do is, using the Wi-Fi on the phone, upload the files to my Google Drive, and then from there download them again to my home PC where I can do the editing. Not that I do much editing, but I have to stitch the bits together, and then save that as a single video file and then upload that to YouTube. And all of this takes hours and hours and hours, not helped by the fact that we're rural, so we don't have a fiber connection. We're on effectively a 4G wireless internet connection, so it's very slow. So that makes making the films harder, and I've looked at getting my phone fixed. The other problem is I'm using a gimbal that clamps around the phone, and that's actually cracked the back glass on the phone. It's not a big deal, but the problem is, to fix the phone you have to take the back glass off, and they do that by heating it up and removing, softening the glue basically, and then the back is meant to pop off. Because it's cracked, it's not going to come off in one piece. So to get the phone fixed, they have to fix the USB port and replace the back glass, and it's hard to get an actual price on that, but it's probably at least $300 New Zealand to get that done. So instead of doing that, and I've looked at this before, I've considered getting a different camera to use just to make these little films. And I've been looking at things like GoPros and cameras like that, because eventually I'm going to want to put a camera on the car when I finally get it on the road and driving around. So I want, a camera on here. I want to maybe put a camera on the little motorbike when I finish that. So I've been investigating cameras, and I've looked at them in the past, and in terms of picture quality and features, the GoPros have always been the best, but they're really bad for reliability apparently. So I was looking at a GoPro 11 as the latest one. I think in New Zealand they're $800 or $900. I'm just too cheap to pay that much. I'd rather spend the money on wood and aluminium and paint and leather and things I'm going to need to finish the car. I've looked at other cameras before, point and shoots, and I don't have a digital SLR. I've got film cameras still. So I had a look at some of the other cameras around. Insta360s and DJI Osmo are the two main ones. The 360s are nice. You have to pair them to your phone to make them work. The DJIs are very nice as well, but they don't do Wi-Fi file transfer. You have to plug them in and out, and I just don't like doing that with the USB-C ports. They're meant to be more reliable, but I don't think they are. I think they break more easily. So the other alternative with the cheaper cameras, and most of them aren't really as good as the GoPros, but they should be good enough. And the other thing is, these action cameras have all sorts of features I'm never going to use. So in the end, I decided, well, if it's going to cost me $300 to fix my phone, which I don't actually need to do, it works fine as a phone. Instead, I've bought a Asco, I think it is, the brand, Asco Brave 7, which is a little action cam. Good enough features. It's got image stabilization. It'll record in the resolutions I need. That's the other thing. People, these days are wanting to record in 4K and up video, which I don't want to do because, again, it'll take me forever to upload and download the files and process them and then upload them to YouTube, which takes forever as well. So I just need a basic little camera that I'm not worried too much about breaking. It's handy that they're waterproof. And hopefully I can use that without worrying about breaking my phone. So that's on order. We'll see when that turns up, see if it makes any difference whatsoever to the actual quality of the picture quality or the video quality. And I'll just see how that works. But I think the car's coming along. Before I make the doors, I actually want to bolt the frames to the chassis. At the moment they're just clamped in place. The rear one's actually held pretty well because it's located on the rivet heads, where the chassis is all riveted together, so that can't really move. I think it can move a little bit side to side, so that's just sitting there, and that's pretty solid just by itself. I still need to finish shaping those as well before I do the doors, but I think bolt the timber down, make the doors. As I mentioned, I've got all the hardware for that now, hinges and bits and pieces. Those are my hinges. The other thing I need to figure out is there are the metal brackets that go in various places. So I'm wondering if the bracket that goes here, if I double up that as the back of the hinge mount. So actually, instead of screwing the hinges in place, bolt them through. So the hinge sits near the bottom here, have that bolted through and have the little angle brackets, effectively, that's what they are, that goes in here, using the same bolt holes. I'm not sure exactly how they did it originally. I need to look at that, but it seems like doing things like that would make sense. And fiddle around with the radiator. So I think what I might do today is actually start practicing my TIG welding. I've never quite got the hang of TIG, aluminium TIG welding. Steel I can do okay, but the aluminium I find a bit trickier, so I think it's just a matter of making sure I've got the right tungstens and the right settings on the machine. Obviously you use AC and you have to get the balance correct and things like that. So I think I might need to spend a little bit of time playing with that. That's going to be important when I make the body, obviously, because I'm going to need to weld all of that together. So that's where we're at. Quite a bit to do again, I guess, but always it's just making progress. Always just have to make little bits and pieces of progress. I'll probably do a completely separate film on the little bike, but that's coming together okay as well. I had some problems with some parts and things, but it's just another matter of slowly putting it together and you know, cleaning pieces up, bolting them back on in the right order. That becomes important at times as well. But I think that'll do for now. I need to clean up the mess that is my lathe.